Hi, my name is Liana Brody, and I'm a playwright, actor, and importantly for the current moment, translator.
Hello, my name is David Paquette, and I am a playwright.
Hello, David Paquette.
Allô, Liana Brody, comment ça va?
Ça va plutôt bien, yeah.
Donc, toi, tu reviens juste de Tadoussac ou tu es allé traduire? Oh, no, it's in English, right? Sorry. So you just came back from Tadoussac,
Yeah,
and now we are going to be speaking about translation.
that's right. From the doing to the talking.
Exactly. And I'm very happy to be doing this with you.
Super happy as always.
And actually, our very first collaboration was with Talisman.
That's right.
Am I
That's
mistaken?
right.
Right?
Yeah.
And so that was Wildfire.
Mm-hmm.
What do you remember of the Wildfire experience, Liana?
Well, I remember you came to me actually. I mean, translators and playwrights find each other in different ways. And you talked to me about, I translated Rebecca Deraspe, who I just went to Tadoussac with, on another Talisman translation of Les Glaces. And you said, you've translated my friend Rebecca, and because I feel that you get her sensibility, I feel like you would plug into mine. And it was true. I mean, you're so different. But I think that if you're going to be a Rebecca Deraspe fan, which I am, you're probably also going to be a David Paquette fan.
Well, that's great because I am a Rebecca Deraspe fan. So, and that's how we ended up doing, first of all, a workshop. That's a thing that I keep in mind about our experience at Talisman. I thought that the conditions of creation, that the space was allowed, the space that we had been given was optimal because we had funding. There was a workshop. We then, Lynn had gotten, Emma Tzbalto was directing, and we had actors. So that hearing the translation as you were working on it, I thought was a very, very precious thing and something that I had not experienced up to then.
No, and you've been translated into multiple languages by multiple people. And I think this is a very rare and precious thing because Montreal is a bilingual city. To be able to do it in situ, to be able to have the writer involved. I always say I don't like collaborating with dead people. Racine, Molière, it's all very well. But I like having that living collaboration, and Talisman is really set up to find actors with an understanding of the cultural context, but who are also really well versed in the culture that we're translating it into. That is so rare. I doubt your Ukrainian translator has somebody with that kind of access either to you or to the culture that you come out of.
Boy. And that was a big difference for me also too. And I thought a lot about you doing this process of translating Wildfire and the other works that we've done together. But I thought it's the hardest translation to do, I think, when you're translating an author who speaks the language you're translating him to. Because I remember with Frank Weigen when I get translated in German, in Deutsch, or Boris Schumann in Spanish, I have to be of blind faith.
Right.
I'm like, yes, okay, I trust you, go ahead. Of course, I trust you too, but I want to read all the drafts, right?
Yeah.
So I remember that had been put on my radar because of Talisman, thinking, oh, it's quite another challenge actually, because it is a language I speak. We're in Montreal, as you just said.
Yeah.
We're both versed in both cultures.
Yeah.
So that was
Yeah, and I think it's sometimes you had that resource as well when you were kind of going, I'm not sure if the effect of this choice is exactly what I would want in the to represent my French, but then we could go to that cadre of people, starting with Lynn Paquette, who you could go to and have essentially a second opinion doctor
Yeah, yeah,
on
right.
whatever I was coming out with. And sometimes I could also say, well, let's just ask. Let's put it out there. And I could have that so that it was reassuring to the writer
Yeah, yeah,
that, yeah, I think there's some support for that approach.
yeah, yeah.
So,
And it was, I think, a multiple um, wave process because we had the workshop.
yeah.
And then I don't remember what came first. I think it was the editing of the book after. And then we had the show also at La Chapelle. The Talisman produced the show. And then we ended up also being able to do just a little bit of fine tuning.
Well, I think, and this is the fun is with Le Poids des Fourmis, we're about to have our third premiere that was in the States. It was actually an American company through Emma Tibaldo and
Oui, c'est vrai.
other folks at CAD. I think that was Sarah Fauteux, don't quote me, but I think it was Sarah who said, hey, there's this translation available. You should look at this. And then we had, just before the pandemic started, you and I had that premiere in St. Louis, Missouri, of all
Right.
places. So that's the joy. Once these things are out in the world, they are accessible to other people, and you just never know where they're going to
way.
end up.
And preparing to have this very spontaneous conversation with you. That's what I thought when I was thinking about Talisman, trying to like synthétiser what it means to me.
Synthesize.
To
yeah.
synthesize what it means to me. Thank you. You see, already working our magic. I thought what's great about having French works being translated in English is that once that first bridge has been built, then as a French author, we have a global visiting card
Yeah.
for our play. Because I remember I was contacted by an agency from Finland last year, and they had heard about the work and everything. But my way to get them interested in the work was to send the English versions because they could not read the French versions.
Yeah.
So that for me is a very direct benefit of being translated, and the Wildfire being done by Talisman is you can kind of multiply.
Claudie! Yes, Claudette! Claudine!
Yes, Claudette?
We're all gonna die. Yup! It's just one of those days!
It could be worse.
You think?
Sure. We could be burning at home, alone.
It goes not just for that play, but for other plays. So we had a reading in the spring in Singapore of Le Poids des Fourmis, which was because Samuel Bagallan from Ithaca, New York, who had produced Le Soulier,
Yes,
he'd
right.
heard about Wildfire. He looked at Le Soulier. He did Le Soulier in English. He then looked at this other play, which he sent to a friend in Singapore, and it's probably going to get a production this fall.
way.
So it's that leveraging that initial investment, that initial contact
Bon, ouais.
into all kinds of possibilities. Yeah.
And that's why I think Talisman not only is a bridge, of course, between English and French, and a bridge between French culture and English culture, but it's also a bridge between an initial local response to work that can become then national and international,
Yeah.
because English is la porte d'entrée, is the first really step to be taken that can lead to so many other steps.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's. I mean, it's fabulous to have that also that port of call that people can go. Oh, where am I going to go to find these scripts that are available in English? Well, I know I can look at what Talisman has done, and they can just look at the seasons and go,
Boy.
oh, here's that interesting young author. Here's that interesting author at the top of their game.
Interesting translators also, of course.
One hopes, yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah.
And that catalog keeps on getting bigger and
Yeah.
bigger with the years, with the experience, with the expansion of the company, because 20 years 20 years
20
in theater,
years.
it's like dog years,
Right.
right? No, but it's a lot. It's an accomplishment.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's very fun to be able to, let's call this a celebration, right?
Chin chin.
Chin?
Hmm. So, what about you? What was your first encounter with the talisman?
It was a phone call or an email from Lynn.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because I got it. I was in a writing residency in Gros-Morne in Newfoundland.
Mm-mm.
And I think it was an email from Lynn. And since Emma Tibaldo was at this,
Mm-hmm.
was she at this residency? I'm losing my mind, so I don't know anymore, but I think she was. So I was like, okay, who's this? But the email was very, it was great because, hello, I'm interested in the work. I'd like to get the play translated.
Mm-hmm.
I need a letter in the next 24 hours. And I was like, what? So anyway, and so that was the very first time, if I remember well.
Uh-huh.
Lynn, if this is not true, you can edit it. But if I remember well, that was it. And that's when I thought, yes, and if I may, I think I have the person I would like to do this translation with, which was you. And Talisman was very, very open to that process. Of course, I think Lynn had heard about your work because as of now, you have translated so many Quebecois writers.
I've been doing it for a minute, yeah.
Right, and you were not yet in Montreal at
No.
that time.
No.
So that was the first time, and then we got together, and I like working with people I also find sympathetic and nice.
Mm-hmm.
So all of that was and it was really, it was kind of like winning the lottery because you're like, we'd like to pay for a translation of your play
Mm-hmm.
in the ideal setting with the workshop, with the actors and everything. So how could I say no? It was a win-win situation.
Yeah, yeah.
And the snowball effect.
Right.
So now Wildfire has made its way. We went to Toronto because
Yeah.
of it,
Yeah.
in St. Louis. Well, you went.
Yeah, yeah.
And it keeps on getting not bigger, but more and more real.
Yeah, Edmonton too. It was a big hit in Edmonton. Yeah, yeah, and unfortunately, it's not every. I mean, of course, French is also a lingua franca in many places, but not every artistic director in Canada can appreciate can make contact with the work in French. The ones who are bilingual, very, very
Yeah.
few.
Exactly.
So yeah, it becomes its natural habitat expands. That's all.
Well,
Yeah.
and was there a difference with you? Because you've done so many translations. Was there, and if so, what was the difference between working in the setting of Talisman as opposed to just like translating on your own?
Well, I mean, I'm lucky. I'm old and wily enough that I don't do much on spec. So I'm usually working with somebody, and I think it's that basis within the culture that we're all talking about. So that's what's unique. So I've translated for companies in British Columbia. I've translated for companies in Toronto, but I think Talisman is so anchored in this reality and yet willing also to find ways that will allow the work to migrate. So it was interesting having premiered Wildfire in St. Louis, Missouri, of all places, and then going to Toronto. And then when it came back, it had its own transformation and a new life where the actors and director said as one, can we bring back certain cultural or linguistic moments of Montreal, even in the names of the play,
Ouais.
so that there's A David Paquette play is always full of play with the language, and so the names get to be involved. And so there's a man's name Clément, meaning peaceful.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, yeah, but there's a moment in the play where the meaning of that name comes into play, and it's not going to land because we in Edmonton, very few people are going to have that experience. So I went, what do we do? And funny little moment, because I grew up in a very kind of Anglo-Irish influenced part of Ontario. You'd have, if you wanted to be all calm, you'd make, there's even a line in one of my plays, you make the bees all calm, you put the smoker in them.
Okay.
And so Cam would have been perfect, except I'm not in Cavan County, Ontario anymore. So I tried Callum for the name. You'd make the bees all Callum, which depending on your accent, pretty rural, can also work, and they're from a rural environment, these some of these characters originally. But the actors just couldn't get it. They just couldn't. So the one, not the Montreal ones, but the ones I was working with. So I finally tried Column and Calm. It's a bit of a stretch, but again, depending on the accent of the person, it kind of works. And that's the thing that seemed to travel the best, was Column. So that poor fellow had 5 different names, and only to come back to Montreal, and they went, can we just call him Clément?
Well, because
everyone will get it.
Exactly, we were exactly where it was written, so it was immediate.
The firefighter gave me a new name. He called me Clément, as in calm, because I was calm in the midst of the horror.
Have this shameful admission that when they did the show at La Chapelle, right?
Popcorn.
When they did the show in La Chapelle, because I've been writing theater for more than 15 years now. So when I go to a theater in Montreal, a French theater in Montreal, I always know people. We always know people because it's kind, theater is a global village. So we end up in French theater. So I'm used to knowing everyone. And then it was suddenly, of course, I knew this was true, but then suddenly it opened me up to a whole other audience, and audiences, I should say, that live in the same city as I do, but that I never see. And some of them were English-speaking theater artists from Montreal. So it was really kind of an awe-opening to say there's this whole other community doing the exact same thing as we're doing, but we almost never mix.
Which is crazy,
It's
right? I mean, we were
crazy.
talking about the national and international possibilities of this translation work, but we weren't talking about how within the same city, even, you are, the solitudes may have blended around the edges a little, but in many ways haven't budged. So you are creating access for people within your own city. You're creating meeting places.
Well, wait. Exactly. And I remember I get that feeling in theater when I'm in different countries because I'm like, I know no one here. This is so exciting. Blah, blah.
Yeah.
And I had that in Montreal, and I thought that is so specific to Talisman because they're really coming, you superpose two theater folks that how is it that we almost never really meet?
And so crucial. And I mean, my husband and I just wrote a play that was, the dialogue was 40% in Mandarin. I did not, we had a translator for that, thank you very much. But people came to the theater who had not come to the theater in years or ever. And you feel that you're giving people access, you're allowing people to be in the same room.
Yeah.
Having the same experience culturally as, as most of their peers in the same city. and allowing everyone to have these shared references and
Oh,
these
ouais.
shared moments of artistic joy. Because Wildfire is one of the best constructed plays I've ever read in my life. And I think that being deprived of that in your own country is a damn shame. So Talisman is doing this crucial work of not just pushing, it's not about pushing stuff on people, it's about allowing people in.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Ouais. And to say it otherwise, in another way, sometimes when I feel that I'm touching a theater limit is when I feel l'entre-nous, that it's theater for people doing theater, talking to people who do theater.
Yeah.
And this Talisman experience for me was on the contrary, it really opened up a whole horizon of new people, which I thought, wow, how is this happening just now, like
Yeah.
13 years later?
Yeah, and I love hearing work in the original language with surtitles. I've done surtitles. It's honorable work. It's great, but there's something particular about everybody being able to drink in the language and the intention without that intermediary. Like when I see every city I see Wildfire in, when you find out things about the story that were not obvious at the beginning. It's the play where I hear gasps. I hear people go,
Yeah.
right?
Dance, puppets,
Yeah.
dance.
And if you don't have the ability to have that immediate experience with what the actors are saying, if you're trying to read it, it's not